Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban responded to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's statement that, thanks to Ukrainians, he can think about growing his belly rather than his army. Orban published the corresponding comment on the X network.
Thank you for yet another campaign speech in support of Ukraine's accession to the European Union.
According to Orban, the statement by the Ukrainian leader will supposedly help Hungarians see the situation more clearly. Let us recall that during a panel discussion at the Munich Security Conference, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that it is Ukrainians who are holding the European front. The President of Ukraine emphasized that behind our people stand an independent Poland and the free countries of the Baltics, Moldova and Romania, which are rapidly developing without dictatorship.
And even a single victor can think about how to grow his belly rather than how to grow his army. In order to stop Russian tanks from returning to the streets of Budapest.
At the same time, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, after participating in the Munich conference, will make a two-day visit to Hungary and Slovakia. These leaders, who often clash with other EU countries, nevertheless maintain warm relations with U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, according to Reuters. It is noted that Rubio will use his visit to discuss cooperation in the energy sector and bilateral issues, including commitments to NATO.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has made yet another cynical statement about Ukraine. This time, he accused the Ukrainian military of allegedly posing a threat to Hungary. He claims that increasingly powerful Ukrainian armed forces could end up on the country's eastern borders.
This is not up for discussion. Hungary will not finance, arm, or legitimize a threat to its own security.
Earlier, during a public speech, the Hungarian Prime Minister went so far as to radicalize his rhetoric, calling Ukraine an enemy of his country. At the same time, he complained that Kyiv is urging Brussels to deny Budapest access to cheap Russian energy. Viktor Orban also criticized the EU's decision to grant Ukraine a €90 billion loan and stated that he does not understand who attacked whom in the war between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. Earlier, the Security Service of Ukraine announced the exposure of an agent network connected to Hungarian military intelligence. According to the SBU, this concerns espionage activities detrimental to Ukraine.
The task of this cell was to gather information about the military security of the Zakarpattia region, to look for vulnerabilities in the region's ground and air defenses, as well as to study the socio-political views of local residents. In particular, to analyze possible scenarios of their behavior if Hungarian troops were to enter the region. Meanwhile,
Hungary is preparing for parliamentary elections and Orban is doing everything he can to hold on to power. He has framed these elections as a choice between war and peace, portraying Ukraine as a country unworthy of support and his own government as the only safe option. But a new poll, as reported by Reuters, shows that in January, the Hungarian center-right opposition party TISA maintained a 10% lead over Prime Minister Viktor Orban's Fidesz party.
Scaring people with war, with poverty, all for the sake of victory. Prime Minister Viktor Orban and his party are running an aggressive campaign ahead of Hungary's parliamentary elections, and politicians are manipulating the topic of Ukraine more than anything else. Will Putin's Hungarian friends manage to keep their positions? More on this in the following report.
There are still 3 weeks left before the start of the election race in Hungary, but in reality, the battle for votes has been going on for several months already, because this time Viktor Orban, who has led the country for a long time, has a serious challenger, opposition figure Peter Magyar and his party TISA. In the face of fierce competition, Orban has thrown caution to the wind. His campaign is full of manipulation, blatant lies, and playing on the fears of Hungarians.
If there's a pro-Brussels government in Hungary, young people will be sent to Ukraine. This is a real threat that we must prevent. We do not wish to send Hungarian soldiers, money, or weapons to Ukraine. We will not allow ourselves to be dragged into this war.
This kind of manipulation regarding Ukraine is practically the central theme of Orban's speeches. He is a longtime friend of Putin and a like-minded ally of Donald Trump, an opponent of aid to Ukraine and its EU membership. Now, both the Prime Minister and his associates are openly claiming that Ukraine is supposedly going to interfere in the elections since it is interested in a change of power in Budapest. Ukraine's position on this issue was voiced by Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha.
By blocking Ukraine's EU membership, Orban is catering to Putin's demands and also hindering the establishment of peace in Europe. Today, Orban is acting like Hitler's accomplice, Ferenc Selassie. You should be afraid not of Ukraine, but of the Hungarians, who are tired of your lies, kleptocracy, and hatred.
Of course, where there's politics, there's talk about money. Orban says that hundreds of millions will be taken from Hungarians and given to help Ukraine. That's just another scare tactic. It has nothing to do with reality, because in fact, the goal is to attract investment to Ukraine. Interestingly, Orban's opponents, the TISA party, also don't support Ukraine's rapid accession to the EU, but Putin isn't their friend either.
We want a ceasefire as soon as possible. Russia's the aggressor. Ukraine is the victim. We respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and we're interested in having an independent neighbor at our border.
Orban calls the TISA party a puppet imposed by the West. Such accusations frankly resemble Russian propaganda. According to the latest polls, the opposition has the support of 51% of voters. Analysts believe that a victory by Peter Magyar would not lead to a radical change in sentiment in Budapest. They would rather be gradual. However, relations between Budapest and Brussels would definitely become constructive right away, and Ukraine would gain a predictable partner on its western border. Katerina Yurisieva, Podrobici, Inter TV channel, United Marathon.